content for digital audiences, deciphering data that we have at our fingertips, and monetizing this really explosive growth in the digital audience that's happening in India, and that same growth that's creating such a hotbed for digital publishing. And we named this conference.
And welcoming good morning to all our guests. Welcome to our city of New Delhi. On a day which is particularly important for news people, because we've got a very big election happening in the city itself. And this is the kind of day that news people get all worked up about, because we are likely to see a dramatic change, a dramatic political change. Nothing gets news people going than a day like today. My topic for this morning is the next big thing in media is the handheld digital multimedia content. I don't think this requires too much by way of foresight to make this kind of prediction, because we are seeing how content consumption is moving literally in hordes to this tiny screen that all of us are always engaged with. We're always looking at this tiny screen. And this tiny screen today has become an extremely powerful computer, supercomputer almost. I read somewhere that the amount of computing power that exists in this one device is equal to the entire computing power that a university like MIT had in the 1960s. So something as pedigreed as an institution as pedigreed as MIT, entire computing facility just 50 years ago has been captured in this one device. So this clearly will change, has changed already, the way we consume content. And before I get into some very structured bits of data points, I think it's important for me to take my proposition up front. And my proposition is that in 5 years from now, or perhaps even less, but in a country like India, perhaps 5 years, almost all news, information, and short format entertainment consumption will move to this handheld device. News, information, and short format entertainment. By short format entertainment, I mean the spooky stuff, the listicles, the entertainment list, that kind of stuff. We go very completely and entirely onto this handheld device. When it comes to live breaking news or live sports, I believe it's going to be a toss-up between the handheld device and the large static screen. It all depends on where the consumer is going to be. If the consumer is able to access, he's not mobile, he's in a room, he's in a place where he can access the big static screen, then he would prefer his breaking news and his live sport on that screen. But if he's mobile, he's on the move, then he'll be almost indifferent to consuming that content on a handheld device.
Journalism, the revenue is always a question mark. How are you going to fuel that business? And can you give a little thought? Share with us some of your own thoughts on how you keep that sustainable. Either news portal journalism or now the handheld device journalism. How do you keep the revenue flow coming? And maybe there you can speak about that. Tell us a little more about advertising editor.
Sure. So I think revenue is still in the world. In India, it possibly hasn't even started yet. But even in as mature a market as America, this would be about 2 years old. So it's very, very early days. But what we are seeing is that audiences are gravitating in hordes. Once audiences gravitate in hordes, the advertising revenue will gravitate as well. Now the form and shape it will take is, of course, the straight plain advertising will always be there. That's the display ad, which will change its form. You'll see the pop-up, you'll see, like you see in YouTube videos, before you see the video, the ad plays out. So display advertising will mutate in its form, but in its essence and spirit, it will move to the digital device. And secondly, this whole concept of native advertising, which in the newspaper world used to be the advertorial. But the advertorial was a very marked out, carved out, almost made not attractive. That will go away, but that will see seep in much more seamlessly into the content, into the same shape and manner. And remember, in digital you can target it. So if I am a cricket lover, then your ability to target cricket content and cricket ads at me is much higher. And therefore, there is very little wastage. Therefore, the seamless weaving in of this advertising editor who will create content that can reach out to people who consume that kind of content. I'm not for a minute saying that you camouflage it. You tell the consumer that this is sponsored content. But the way you make that sponsored content is going to be so much more mainstream and so much more of creativity is going to go into it. And it will be targeted so well that the consumption will go up, and therefore engagement will go up, and therefore the advertiser will pay. Because when he pays today for putting a full page ad in the newspaper, A, he pays one hell of a lot of money. B, he doesn't know what the engagement level is. Is anybody who's watching it for how long? All of those answers he gets in digital. And if I sent out this ad, targeted ad, 25 to 35-year-olds in the city of Delhi, possibly living in this particular area, and out of my target population of say 50,000, 10,000 people actually looked at it and stayed engaged with it for 50 seconds, then I've got my engagement factor, and I'm very happy to pay you money for that. Unlike I'm giving you just an ad, and I don't know whether those 10,000 people in that locality, in that age group actually saw it or not. So that will be the role of the advertising editor.
We seem to be able to afford not to change as quickly. So if the editor of a television channel within the system is next to me, or somebody in the online system is next to me, if he pressurizes saying we need to tweak this, else we will lose numbers, he will change it quickly faster. But if a print guy has the same question saying, maybe we need to tweak this, else we will lose our audiences. So you spoke about, say, for television, you said, that you still have the TV set on, so you have the audience, we don't have the engagement. In print, how do we differentiate that factor? Because tomorrow, whether I run a story or I don't run a story, my aggregate print run does not change. My advertising is not changing. So I think print is still able to function in a slightly fossilized manner and not react as quickly.
I would answer the newspaper owners in the West how much they thought it wouldn't change and how much it has changed. If the mighty New York Times can agree now to curate third-party content, then the world has changed. then I think people, as I said, the mighty New York Times, which said that it has
timeline in mind, how long can print do this in India before we really need to tweak?
Well, India is, my personal bet is that in the English language medium you have only about 4 or 5 years. In the Hindi and the regional language mediums you possibly have about 10 years, because literacy levels are going up and therefore newer consumers are joining every day. But more than a decade, I'd be very surprised. I'd be very, very surprised. I will take your lead now. Thank you very much for being such a wonderful.
Those revenues on print and digital are basically split between 85 billion US advertising revenue and 78 billion circulation revenue. One of the key things here is that a lot of publishers in the United States and North America are trying to build up their non-display based revenue sources that eventually we're going to see their readership revenue and the advertising revenue settle out and then go lopsided. So people really need to focus on revenues that are not display related. Specifically what I was talking about a minute ago, this is digital newspaper paid circulation in millions of US dollars, and that's rapidly growing worldwide. This again is that 47% increase over 5 years. And those systems do exist, and I encourage you to talk to some of our partners that are here today. I think a real stopping point, frankly, for us is that a lot of the content management editorial systems that I've seen don't have good mobile publishing tools. So our editors and reporters can't be out at events just with their phone. They still end up having to come back in or file a story on a laptop or something. But I definitely think that there are some technological hurdles that if you're just pulling all the time from mobile, that you could definitely find a better acceleration by having a central point.
and sort of leverage what the internet enables, which I'll talk about when we get to interactivity, and really position ourselves as a global brand. Within a year and a half, in June of 2014, we launched Quartz India, which probably most of you who are here are familiar with, and I just have that version up over here. And India is a very important market to us, and I'm feeling like from everything Ben said that we should be doing, I think there's like one thing I said, all right, I'm just going to go home and stress this message, but we seem to be on track. So again, it is lovely to be here. Our topic for today is interactivity and engagement. Can I just ask, how many of you have a separate audience engagement division? Wow, so actually my first lesson is probably already followed by most of you. I just thought we should go over some of the rules, literally, of engagement. And then I'll launch into some of the strategies to achieve some of this. I'll start with the easy and the more fun parts. And then we'll get to the hard part, which is changing your newsroom or your news organization's culture. The first, which is a part of that culture, is that engagement is not a separate function in a newsroom. That really everybody who is brought on needs to see engagement as a core part of their jobs. At Quartz, we launched with a shareability model, so we were somewhat fortunate in launching right around the time that Raghav Bahl is speaking of, where Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and LinkedIn are news delivery services, and we were able to seize on that moment. But that doesn't mean that we're not redefining ourselves every few months. Engagement is something that we talk to every reporter who's hired about, and we basically let them know that our readers have come to expect this from us, that it's no longer a reporter putting out information and sort of going on to the next story, that there's a process that needs to continue. The second rule is that the internet very much expects that, and if you do not, as you've seen with not just media companies, but you know, social media has really forced dramatic reinvention of customer service as we knew it, right? If you do not engage, if you do not meet the customer halfway, they're going to come after you in very public forums. We often see engagement as something that we do after the content is disseminated, and I'm going to use some examples of how we actually need to be seeing engagement as the content, and I'll talk more about that shortly. The really big part of interactivity that I'm still seeing some reticence to accept is that the conversation is not happening on our pages anymore. In fact, it's not something that we have control over, and that we really do need to go meet our readers in all of the various platforms that they are engaging in. And then the last, which I'll also talk about a little bit, is that journalists are members of a community also. And this kind of gets back to our training of journalists to be truly engaging with readers as a part of their job.
Your site is very clean,
very
not
clean.
many advertisements
Well,
there.
thank you.
And
See, that's what we told people when we launched. We said, this is not going to be like a flash dancey experience.
Pune. My question is that, take Quartz India for example. I'm curious to know, what is your ratio of field reporters and desk, you know, in the traditional way, but how many people are out there?
Yeah. So based in these places. Now, what I've noticed, and that's just from my own personal interest, when we do a story about the Northeast, and I tend to keep an eye on the region since that's where I'm from, that piece, because it has an inherent community of interest, goes viral. So when Priyanka Chopra was playing Mary Tom, and instead of doing the piece that everybody else in India was doing, which was how could Priyanka Chopra be playing Mary Tom, we did a piece named 5 Northeastern actresses who could have played Mary Tom, right? So it was somewhat of a solutions journalism piece, but also a reminder that guess what, there are actresses in the Northeast. So we saw outrage in a market, and it was a reporter actually who covers film in New York who wrote that piece because he knows the Indian film industry. So I don't discount shoe leather reporting, I don't discount being in the field, but I also don't, our readers in some ways are transnational, they're borderless. Indians represent this probably best of all, those of you who are running sites in India know that your overseas traffic is a very significant part of your traffic. I'm not going to run away from that, and if me, as an SME sitting in New York City, can say, hey, this is something that everybody's talking about, but it doesn't need to be necessarily from that region. So shoe leather reporting in that case matters less than the expertise that a film writer brings to it. In the case of, you know, the hanging of those women, the rape victims, which I think there's like still controversy over whether exactly what happened. But we did send a reporter to that village to capture what would be on ground reality. You know, there was that Magsafe award winner over child labor. What is his name? I'm drawing a blank. The child rights advocate who just won that big prize last year. We sent somebody to the place that he is from, and it turns out that like his neighbors didn't even know what he did. And so in that case, it's bringing somebody to a place in a way that sitting in a newsroom in Delhi is not going to be able to do.
But our audiences, then at the things we see are working in video online, and finally the lessons we've been learning, and we keep on learning. This is really an ongoing process that never stops. So obviously things have moved on a bit from there, where the family just sat around the TV set, no distractions, no mobile phones, and not much choice. However, TV is massively important still. So these are figures from the UK, where we see that 91% of people say they watch the news, or they watch TV, every week. However, as they're watching TV, about half of them are also doing something else with a tablet or a phone. And a quarter of them are actually sharing and talking to other friends about what they're seeing on TV. So it's kind of a communal experience. But what's really shifting is who's watching TV. So this is a survey done by Reuters last year, and they went to 10 countries, unfortunately not India, but 10 countries around the world, and looked at age groups, who's watching TV. And the blue, those in the back you probably can't see, the blue are 18 to 24-year-olds. So half of 18 to 24-year-olds see online as their primary source for news. Only 38% of them would turn on the TV for news. So it's a huge shift, and as you can see, it's like, the older you are, the more likely you are to watch TV for news. The younger you are, the less likely. And I don't think that when you become 25, you stop using digital. So that curve is just going to accentuate even more. And at the BBC, it's not only what we've seen is the shift to mobile. So within online, mobile has just become this massive thing. And this orange line here is mobile, and the red is desktop. So we're seeing actually a slight decline in desktop and a huge rise in mobile. So this chart starts in 2011. And we've got to the point where, what we call the tipping point, which we got to probably in 2013, where we get more traffic from portable devices, if you want, than we do from desktop. So on an average day, it's probably about 56%. Weekends, it's much higher. But for those of you who are working online, there's a traditional lunchtime peak for desktop. That continues to exist, but what we're also seeing is huge spikes in the morning when people go to work, so they're reading on their phones. Another one in the evening when they're going home. And then at weekends when people just check their phones every day. So as you can see from that upward trajectory, it's not that people are replacing one activity for another, they're just consuming more news, which for us is great.
We have been doing this for the past 4 or 5 years, where we do news clippings of somewhere around 2 minutes maximum of, and we try to retain the file size of somewhere around 3 to 4 MB, and we post somewhere around 40-50 videos in a day.
Edition to be published in the States. When TV was launched in 2009, and it was the first HD quality channel to be launched in the States. Sakshi.com was started in 2009, very young site, but it has been seeing a steady growth, and it's one of the leading online sites in our state. By the way, it's Telugu vernacular site. So our website is a culmination of our paper and our TV. It extends both of it, but takes it beyond that. So I will go over some of the things we do where we cash in on what we already have and how we do differently than what the paper or TV does.
That is a screenshot of our site.
So we have existing content in-house. We have a whole reporter chain, we have photographers, and all this is a ready-made asset for us. So we, like I said, we are an extension of what we already have. And we use all the photographs, we reuse what the reporters have written, and we reformat it for the web. We have a lot of footfall with our paper features, our editorials, our op-eds that we feature on mostly on our carousel. How the newspaper is done each morning, where the editorial sits and sets the agenda for the day, wherein they tell you what they think that you need to read. This is kind of lost, usually online. But we try to maintain a balance by putting up our daily newspaper stories, the front stories, front page stories, and our tabloid stories. We try to put them up on our carousel and the right-hand side. So each morning our editorial goes through what all has been put up in the page, in the paper, and then we put them up here for our morning traffic.
Change technologically, change market-wise, change content, journalism, but most importantly, change of mind. And that's going to be the keynote of what I'm going to be speaking. When I talk about retooling, they told me I have to speak on retooling. I have kind of shifted the focus a bit, and I say you need to retool your mind now. Everything else is possible. Any technologist who tells you today that this is impossible doesn't know his job. Anything can happen. Some time back, I'll start with a story that in 1998, 2000, early 2000, I met a very remarkable gentleman by the name Professor Kevin Warwick, and he was engaged in a very peculiar kind of research project. For that, he had cut open his forearm right there and introduced a microchip into his sensory nerves. What that was supposed to do is, as he walked into his lab, the door was opened on its own, the air conditioner set itself to the climate he wanted, there was a tea kettle on his table which boiled him a cup of coffee just the way he wanted it, and it was almost as if he had turned into a god of his environment. No physical manifestation of any kind of work, just by sensing he could move the environment around him. Now, why was he doing it? So he argued that there would be an age of super powerful robots who would take away the world from the human beings who made it. So this is like some kind of a Frankenstein fear that he had. So he kept developing it, and he had very good arguments too. So he says, just behind this wall, which separates the two rooms, there are a lot of pipes running up. And listen closely, can you hear a rat going up the pipeline? No, you can't, because your ear is not equipped to hear those sounds. But leave a cat or a dog there, it would probably be worrying at the walls to be able to listen, because it can. So he says human beings by race are weaklings, and that's right also. We don't have claws, we don't have fangs, we don't have teeth, we can't bite, slaughter, we can't do nothing at all. And we walk on two legs, which means one of you solid built guys, if you were to poke me, I'd be down on my face. But had I been on my 4 feet, it would have taken a lot of you to take me down. And that's exactly what he wanted to do. Fix this microchip into your sensory nerves, and you would be able to get extra perceptory senses to be able to build your defenses against all these upcoming things, huge robots, and it's already happening. Understand exactly what they wanted. And as he says, including things like love making happening telepathically. Can you imagine this? This actually happened, it succeeded. And this is 2000. Today, you are on 2015. More than 50 years have passed since then. No, my mathematics is okay. I'm saying 50 years have passed since 2002 when I spoke to him. Well, all right. We went from this to this, and now you have a circle. Think about it. In the next few years,
I'm not into this prediction game, but in the next few years, every surface is going to turn into a computer. So you're at a restaurant, that table is suddenly beginning to perform for you. The restaurant, the menu would be open on the table. It would also affect your sensory nerves, which means the aroma will come out of the every menu item on the menu card on the table. So this surface table is already there with Microsoft. And now, from the table, we have gone to the cloud, which means you don't need to buy laptops and mobile phones. It's all up in the air. And anything is an access device for you. You can actually call all your data from the cloud. You don't need servers. All this money being spent for needless hardware, that's all going to go. And this possibility exists in the next few years. Things are going to change dramatically. And that affects every industry. I mean, you might think this is all technical stuff, I should be this, but it affects every industry. Some of the people are slow to adopt that change, some are fast, and some are really, very fast. Now, I'm really wanting to talk about this. You know about the Google Glasses, right? So there is a video camera right here on your specs, and you look at the world just the way your eye is seeing it. It's not like a video camera or a mobile camera, nothing of that sort. You're seeing just the way you see the world, and you can capture it. What is next in it? So they asked me at some of the organizations where I go, what is going to be the possible practical use of wearing a glass like this? I say, next time what happens is, I look at you, sir, I look at you, and suddenly the image is captured and sent back to the Google search engine, and all your data that you have uploaded is playing up right in front of my eyes. I've never seen you, I've never met you. In this instant, one glance, I know everything about you. Think about it. Next time, as a journalist, I go to interview somebody, I have these glasses on, I don't need to do all this damn research which I spent 3-6 hours. It's all there right in front of me playing, and that's the world coming to. So, where is the advancement? I don't know. People might invent it. Like I said, technical people can do magic in this world. What is going to be next? So they will say, here's this guy who already wears a spec. Here's this guy who already wears a spec. So how does he wear another spec on it? So tomorrow they will go and invent a contact lens which can do the same. Then they will say, the stem cell research has developed so much. Why not graft a stem cell when the baby is born and put it into its side? And it will grow with the baby. When it becomes an adult, it can actually perform all these things. And look, suddenly, in these 10 years, Professor Kevin Warwick's world is alive in front of you. Before I die, I'm going to be seeing this world. I'm 46 now. In the next 20 years, this will happen. Today, we are in this chasing game. That's what I'm afraid. I've actually requested a lot of you people to come here. Well, some of you are reporters, some of you are editorial people. I'm hard trained in journalism. A lot of things are beginning to worry me. A lot of things, and I'm going to share all that with you. So what is generally happening in the, and I'm going to be very straightforward. Please don't mind my doing that. Every newsroom I go, I've changed a lot of jobs. I've lost a lot of jobs. People have thrown me out of jobs just because I propagate change. And what is happening in the news world is, everybody says, I am online division, I am radio division, I am television division, I am XYZ division. We will not talk to each other. No integration possible. And that happens all the time. Every time I say, you can't raise armies. You can't have an army of people sitting here doing your online work. You can't have an army sitting there publishing your, how many can you afford? And here, look at these upstarts. They are coming up. One person graduated out of school, and now I have an institution as large as your 60-year-old or 100-year-old newspaper. Can you stand up to that? You cannot afford to do this. You need better ways of working. And it's mostly about the mind. Like I said, it's not about newspapers not coming together with the radio. It's all about the mind. It's about the people who occupy those positions who are not willing to change for some reason. I don't blame them. Sorry, this is an interesting story. You know, in 2000, I was working with an organization, and this is about 2002, 2003. The internet wasn't such a popular medium, and they told me that why don't we start a citizens news forum, just the way you said it here. And I was trawling the internet looking for stories, the Big Bang story, to start. I mean, everybody does that. So I trawled the internet. This is sitting on my desk, not moving an inch. I sat there, I started trawling. Now I have some understanding of how searches work. I know about parts of the internet where you Probably some of you can't go. I know how to access those. I know where the stories reside. I'm part of too many groups, and I get to hear all kinds of peculiar stories going on. So here I met this chap. He's like a nomad wildlife photographer called Anuj Singh. He came there and he said, I've got this photograph, and this is taken in a place called Lahore, if you listen to Himachal Pradesh, very cold place, and this is the India-China border. And he said, I was on this bike expedition one day, and as I was traveling, I went to this front where this is kind of an ITBP hub, you can't go, but that night, they all sat drinking there, and the army jawan said, Chalo aao tumhe Shah Rukh Khan se milane le chalte hain. So they took him to the top of the mountain. There was a broken tomb, and inside the tomb they discovered this. He didn't know what it was about, but people को चादर चढ़ाते हैं ना जो auspicious लोगों को, तो उसी तरह चादर local लोग चढ़ाते थे, but very few people knew about it. So online, I hunted this guy down, and he sent his photographs to us online. We were very intrigued. Probably this was the big bang story we were looking at to start our Citizens News initiative. So we sent this to Discovery. We got Anuj Singh in touch with the Discovery people. The Discovery people came here, investigated this, and came up with a very remarkable story. This is a mummy. India has its own mummy, mind you. And this is 500 years old, which is about the time Columbus discovers America. And and then they came out with the story. These are Tibetan monks who would come down from Tibet and walk, and they were pretty rigorous kind of monks. So what they would do is when they would sense a problem in a local area, they would sit down like this in this meditation posture. It was like this, and they put their hand behind and sit like this with a jute restrainer running down the neck, under the thigh, and this was essentially to keep the monk in the same position. And he would sit there like this, and in case he pulled up like this, because of exertion, to choke him. So this was a very peculiar practice they had, and they would sit there like this and give up their life. Then they would give up their life, there'd be a rainbow in the sky, and the problem would disappear from the face in space. So we discovered this, and this huge photograph came up. Now listen to this. I wasn't entertaining you with the story. I was working for this pretty big newspaper at that time, and we came out with this story. We were the online division, run under a different management. The online division was under a different management, and they said, we can't use this story, you're online. And we were too determined. We were too determined because we had found this story after a lot of effort, and this was first meaningful interaction. So we bought space, advertising space in our own newspaper and put it up there. I've hidden the name. I don't mean to offend the organization. Very good, and I'm really devoted to that. But I put it up there. Next day, Reuters picked up the story, flashed it worldwide. Think about it. And story after story after story, and equally brilliant in its impact. I don't do political hard stories. I am into speeches, more or less. But these are good human interest stories, rejected each and every time. One of the stories was very important, and this is about our history and our understanding of Indian freedom movement. We kind of overturned the whole story because the evidence we got online was so powerful that the Indian government had to call us to depose this Hurray and, of course, bury the evidence. But we came out with all these stories, and mind you, in 2003, sitting online, sitting at our desk, we could discover these stories. Imagine the power that you have now. Are you using it? Or are you using the Facebook and social media and everything just to publish your stories? What all can you do with this? These are, like in the Delhi police, they say, your eyes and ears program. You can't be everywhere. You have beat reporting these days. So you go to the court, put your reporter there, but you can't be everywhere. Why not let the people tell you what the stories are? Then you can expand on it. Why not use this in so many different ways? But each of you will have to evolve your own systems to do that. Now I'll put you through a test. Next time, assuming you're all employers at an organization, and this kind of a resume comes to you. Can you read? So it says, Mr. Narendra Singh, living in New Delhi, he's age 24. He has a degree in modern communications, has honors in HTML5, Visual Basic Java, and specialization in virtual investigation and cyber forensics. Will you give him the job now if he comes here? And to add to that, I'll just give you an extra twist. Assuming he's dressed like this. Will you give him the job? His pant is cut here, thread hanging loose. I put that earring deliberately. I didn't get that on Google. So I put that. Would you give him the job? But I tell you, he's going to be exceptional. You can't understand a thing in his resume today, but he's going to be crack shot. He can change the way your organization behaves. Will you give him the job today? Think about it. Change is slowly creeping in. These big organizations I've worked for, they're all demolishing their newsrooms and building this hub and spoke model. Now you know what a hub and spoke model would be, just in case you don't know. So at the center, all the editors would sit, the television, the radio, the print, everybody sits here, and like spokes from a cycle, the other members of the team will sit in lines like this. So what it does is that the integration is possible. Like I say, my big fear is you can't raise armies every time you have a new division there. Today, the Google glasses may be here. You can't have another army for people doing Google. What do you do here? So an integrated model like this could be developed. So there are a lot of, some of the international newspapers doing this. Some Indians have started doing this. But I'm saying, how long do you keep aching to death? You have your editorial also, as a journalist, how long can you keep aching to death? They have their own, we have our own unique set of problems here, and we have our own solutions. We may take advantages of all these social media and everything, and Google and everything, but we need to do something unique with it in our own special Indian way. And I'm telling you, it's time to get ahead of them. They have led the way for far too long, and it has been killing us. And it's time now to get ahead of this race. The purpose is that content, all the content that you create has to be malleable. It means it can be used in any kind of form. So tomorrow they come up with a mobile, they come up with Google glasses, they come up with anything. Your content has to be so flexible that it can fit into all these devices without you having to retrain armies and armies of people. You'll become economically so weak if you keep doing that. Where is the money going to come from? I mean, maybe the bigger newspapers have so much money, but what about the middle and the smaller newspapers? How can they afford something like this? That hub and spoke model would cost you, along with the system and the redesigning, would cost you something like 100 crore rupees. How many of you can afford it? And you're not even sure tomorrow this will get redundant. What do you do? You've invested all your money there and you hope it will work for you, but it may not. What do you do then? Today, all our Indian groups are in this pincer circuit. Please listen to me. Please listen to me. We are in this pincer movement. You know what a pincer movement is? It's like an army word. You bomb the first truck here, the last truck here, and the entire convoy of trucks can be bombed out of survival. So this is the pincer grip, and we are all in this pincer grip now. Google coming in from here, and a lot of small independent organizations, one man, two man army coming in from here, and they're getting really big. Google is really pressing on you. These individuals are also pressing on you. What is the problem with Google? You know about this thing called caching, right? So you have your story, and there will be a link for posterity. In case you take it out of your own website, on posterity, there will be a link like caching. And they can, without your permission, keep clicking back on your link. What about your effort? This is your content. This is not Google property. What about that? Think about it. They're making all the money in the world, and you, like a content creator, have got nothing at all. Features? That's caching drama for you. Monopoly. Everybody is talking Google, Google, Google. What about you? Acquisition. The last time I was in a big national newspaper, secretly, few people came up to me and said, what are you doing with the archives of your news organization? Why don't you give it to us? What would they do with so many years of your archives? This is called steps of history. Every time they look for a story which you have done, as a layman, as a consumer, what am I saying? Google kar lete hain. Google kar lete hain. They're not saying Sakshi can do it, or Malayalam Manorama can do it. No, Times of India can do it. Hindustan. No. Google kar lete. What are they doing? Think about what's happening here. They're snatching your history from you. 75 years, 100 years, more than 100 years, you spent a century creating all that content and brand value, and in less than 10 years, Google is saying, Google कर लेते हैं, आपका तो history गया ना, आपने किसके लिए काम किया? Are you going to keep it alive? Think about it again. Google क्या कर रहा है? Think about it again. These institutions, you might listen, too small for me. This bedroom creation by a little child of 21. What can we do to a massive organization like me? Don't. This is the piranhas. And they'll bite you, strip you of your flesh and blood in less than 30 seconds. And that's going to happen. If you're not careful, this is going to happen. These are like piranhas. Danger. But why am I saying all this? What does it matter if Times of India or Hindustan Times or Malayalam or Sakshi aren't there? There would be somebody else. No, dangerous. Your traditional news house is just important. You have an ethical history. Think about it. Ethical history. I open my Facebook, I open my WhatsApp account every day. Pass it on to 10 more. Rumor mongering. It's killing your country. You're out there to do a service, and that's very important. Last time, I met a doctor living in my neighborhood. She has just joined the government health service. And she came up and told me this story. Private hospital in the private hospital, they ask you to abort 30 females every month. That's the target set. So whether she needs an abortion or not is immaterial. I'll just go there and do the abortion. I can't take it anymore, so I've now moved on. Isn't this happening in journalism too? Think about it. I'm losing money, so now I'm willing and open to do whatever I want. Whether it's ethical, not ethical, you know about these stories, right? And I'm afraid this country has to survive. Let's not go the Pakistan way. Let's not go the Pakistan. If we don't tell the truth, if we don't stand ethically, we will go to Pakistan. When the terrorists were building their hubs in Pakistan, none spoke. Do we go that way? We need to be accurate. And these who are trained as journalists have to do this. Think about it. This is a service. This is a service. This is not about making money. We need to make money, and I'm going to tell you, there are clear, ethical, clean ways of making money. And now it's the language. You know about this, right? I read in the newspapers that a lot of national and big news organizations have joined Google in this mega alliance for languages. Language is a big market. This is the market that has been kept away from the internet because this is all predominantly English. What about Telugu? What about Malayalam? What about Tamil? They're getting into that space now. They'll take away the market even before you realize. Till yesterday there was a problem. This is the technical side of it. There was a problem with languages. मैं बीड़ी पीता हूँ. मैं बीड़ी पीता हूँ. The translation of that in English is I am drinking cigarettes. आप देख रहे हैं? क्यों? The engine was primarily looking at words as islands. You know, they couldn't. There was no context in it. It didn't have a human mind. Look at what's happened now. Now the languages don't need this. They are looking at languages like a mathematical problem. So they want data sets of information. मतलब आपका 100 साल का newspaper, 100 years of your newspaper, they take away from you and they'll say every time Narendra Modi comes next to Prime Minister of India, they see a relation. So it is the number of times it repeats, so the accuracy level also grows. You say, why are they interested in the archives? Think about it. Why do they want an alliance with you now? You think they're trying to do you a big favor by doing that? No. They want the data set and they'll tackle the language, and even before you realize, they'll be in the languages market. That's the way you had to grow. But you were resistant. So, here I come to the point. I'm leaving you with something to think about. Take me very, very seriously on this. You want to survive? Try doing this. There are news agencies in this country. In 1947, a lot of people came together and said we need to build a news agency because everybody couldn't afford to put a reporter in every part of the country, right? If you said that, now why can't you think differently? Why can't we collaborate, come together and build an institution that will also sell you technology, that will also keep and protect your copyright, help you make money on your archive, and it will work for you. It's your body, it's your organization. You funded it just in the way PCI and UNI and other organizations are doing it. Right now, our news agencies are only dealing with text content. Why not the rest of the content? Why can't we pool our resources? Imagine a content management system that costs you 100 crore rupees. Can each of you afford it? Why don't you pool your money and build this content management system and the newsroom technology? And why can't we take all the archives from the newspapers, copyright protected, and then say we will scan it. Scanning takes a lot of money and time. Let this common organization build this technology and the tools to take your archive and put it back for you. In the sense, every time you put out a story, the related stories also come with it. All this can happen automatically. You don't need human beings to do that. And if you think that's not needed. So why can't we have a common pool? And I say they will develop all these technology for you. They'll help train resources for it and then create these virtual leagues. You don't have to place a man, you do need to place a man in the Supreme Court and elsewhere to pick up legal stories. What about the virtual? What about the virtual world? They too can have beats. Why don't you have people trained to keep a watch on the virtual? What's happening there? That's where a lot of things are happening. It's a virtual world. It's almost like this. Don't imagine there's a gap there. Archival. So much history that you have. Why are you losing it? You can make a lot of money on it. It's lying there wasted. I've gone through news organizations, everything coming to status. People are doing OCR and all that. But that's not good enough. What about relationship building? Today, sitting here, half a second, you say Indian budget happening, all the budget reports from your past news automatically, 5 seconds. I'm not asking your human beings to go there, dig deep. No. It can all happen. But where is this common pool? Can you spend so much money archiving all that data and creating these systems? You lose. I mean, the idea is to conserve money and do whatever it takes to win over. So this organization that we need built with mutual collaboration can also protect your copyright, which means that now in the rest of the world, Satish is here. Satish was the first time he mentioned it to me that what AP is doing. In the sense, Google was taking away all their content and paying them patents. So they stood up, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they went into litigation and won. And now they're getting reasonably good payments. Today, if you want to stand alone and fight Google in a court in USA, you lose. But assuming all your money is pooled here to fight that legal battle for the entire community of Indian journalists and Indian news organizations, possible, and we can win. We can win this battle in their courts also, without bleeding, and you've got to do it. You've got to do it. You can cultivate these markets. I'm saying languages are coming in. All these people. I went to these tribals in the Amgiri tribals. They are in Orissa. So the mountain used to stand like this, and now one big corporate, my big worry about all of this, came in, gave liquor to the tribals there, and the mountain which was like this is now like this. They're mining for bauxite there in rich, green, virgin forest land. And all these people, I mean, we're all well-read, educated people, and I look for my daughter who's been going to a public school, looks at that mountain and says, oh, it's mine, let me mine it. And these people, they're also educated in their own sense of the word. They say, ये तो देवी हैं, उनको प्रोटेक्ट करना है, और सालों से वो जंगल वहीं खड़े थे, और आज ऐसे हो गया. Tomorrow it will go down like this. Bauxite is poisoning the people. Their legs are all cavities ridden. Who will talk about them? They don't know English. They can't come onto the internet. Where is the democracy? Democracy is for the English speaking. But what about languages? You tackle these languages now, and you can gain a lot of market and do your service. So I'm almost on the last leg, and I'll tell you about a story. Years back, a friend of mine, a Sikh gentleman, very tall, handsome, ruddy gentleman, he had spent about 20 years in the UK, and he was coming back for the first time. And he came there, and I went to welcome him at the airport. As they walked in, I took him to his house, and the entire Punjabi family circle was there, grandmother, relatives, everybody standing. Bacha vilayat se aaya. This is big. It used to be big. So when he came there, and promptly, even after 20 years, he bent down, touched his Dadi's feet, and said, Karipona Dadiji. Translation, seeking your blessings. This is for those who don't understand Punjabi. Went down and said, Karipona Dadiji. And Dadiji was happy. It looked as if somebody had restored her to 16 years. And she was thrilled. First attention, foreign coming, grandson, and she's there. And she turned around and all flourished. And he said, "Chinna changa munda hai, saat samundar par gaya, badliya hi nahi." He went across 7 seas, and look, he has not even changed. We hear this in the Indian tradition. And this gentleman was walking me through the door and said, "Did my dadi ridicule me, or was she blessing me? I'm supposed to be this chap who went 7 seas, interacted with so many cultures, met so many people, learned so many things, and I've not changed. I must be this big dunce." I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
They were, kind of stealing it the way Google does it. So AP decided to, take them forward, and it went on for some time. But I think before both ends decided, Google decided to pay AP for their coin. There was a settlement between AP and Google. So that's what it. They started doing subscription based. So started sharing revenue with it. That's how it was. I mean, I don't have much details about it because it's done at a corporate level, but that's how we handle that.
You need to be paid for creating that content. You cannot be fleeced. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you don't participate with Google or Facebook, but you need to be paid your due. Where is the money for the salaries going to come from? These are institutions that need to survive. Tomorrow, if one of these bigger newspaper groups don't survive, think about it.
But when a newspaper publishes a report that makes money by advertising it, but after it has been published, then
for editorial content, for BBC News editorial content, working inside any of these platforms. And I, as part of the research, I've looked around and no other news organisation is really doing anything on. So I'm talking about things like WhatsApp.
Really made it really stark for us. You won't be able to see it very clearly, but essentially what it's showing you is the sort of the user growth of some of the big sort of social media giants 4 years into their life cycle. So Skype, 4 years in, they acquired 52 million users. Twitter acquired 54 million. Gmail then became the really big one at 123 million. And then Facebook acquired 145 million 4 years into its birth, if you like. But then WhatsApp, 4 years in, had acquired nearly 420 million users. And it was that massive sort of growth in user numbers that really got our attention about 18 months ago. And the reason why we were interested was obvious, the sheer numbers of people who were on these platforms. The big difficulty, however, was unlike with platforms like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, these were very, very closed environments, so you can't actually see what's going on inside any of these platforms unless you're actually in there or communicating with people. And so our challenge was to see if there's any way that we can actually get inside these platforms and start maybe engaging with people inside these platforms, but also is there a way of maybe pushing out content inside these platforms? And so as a result, this is, I guess, just one thing to bear in mind with a lot of these technologies. Some of you may not recognize all of these logos for these instant messaging companies, but the one thing that we sort of realized very early on was to really view these platforms essentially as mobile-first social media platforms, and not just chat apps which have nothing really to do with news or have nothing really to do with any of our social media strategy. And so this was something that became very obvious quite early on.
A country where we had quite a significant presence, but also quite a significant ambition to grow our audience and our reach and penetration and so on. And the third sort of determining factor was, can that story in that country or that region have a sort of a chat app that's very big that we can actually play around with and see if we can combine those three factors. And luckily enough, the Indian elections happened in April and May last year, and it worked really well in terms of timing. Because here was a country where, biggest democratic vote in history, pretty big story. We had a very big team across India and also centered around our Delhi bureau. So we knew that there would be a lot of content that BBC News was going to be producing in English and in Hindi and other vernacular languages as well. And anecdotally at that time, we knew that WhatsApp was very big in India, and that was just mainly because so many of my friends and family were on WhatsApp, and just generally, anecdotally, we just got a sense that lots of people were on WhatsApp. And a few months later, actually, that was verified because WhatsApp did reveal that India is the single biggest country of WhatsApp users. So I think now WhatsApp has over 700 million users globally, and India has 70 million alone. So 10% of WhatsApp share is in India itself. So what we decided to do was as an experiment, launch a BBC India account inside WhatsApp and another chat app which we were really interested in called WeChat. WeChat is primarily very big in China, but it is now growing quite quickly well, outside China, but they've done a lot of marketing in India and are looking to grow in the West as well. And we decided to launch these two accounts in Hindi and in English, just so that we can try and experiment with the different types of audiences and whether one type of audience was more effective or more interested in our content than the other. So I want to go through what we did with WeChat first of all. WeChat was probably the much sort of slicker user interface that we had of the two that we tried out. Inside the app, it's quite easy to just set up a sort of a brand presence or account of which users can then just subscribe to by just finding the user ID. And on the left-hand side is an example of the sort of the daily push alert that we would send out. And so in this case, it would be sort of a series of bundled headlines, and then each of those segments that you see there on the left, users could then tap on their phone, and that would take them to our online story. And so it was quite a clean way of potentially referring people back to our own mobile site from inside WeChat. And also people were able to then share that content with all their friends inside WeChat as well. And just an example of what you did, like say we tapped on that top story there with Rahul Gandhi, you get this interstitial screen that follows, which is just the first 2-3 paragraphs of that story, and then you can click further and actually takes you to our main mobile site. The other thing that was really useful as a feature is that along the bottom you can see that we had 3 tabs on the account, which were basically powered by our RSS feeds from our main news website. And so the additional value for WeChat users of our account was that in addition to getting that daily push alert straight onto their phone, if they went to our own home account, they would be able to just tap on the various different indexes and then be returned the latest stories inside the app. And again, if they then tap on any of those stories, it would take them to the relevant story on our mobile site. And this is the example of the sort of the back-end administration tool of what WeChat provides. So it was relatively easy to then create content, manage the content, and publish it out through this desktop publishing dashboard, which gave us some very basic tools in terms of measurement and so on as well. WhatsApp was a very, very different challenge. WhatsApp doesn't have a desktop dashboard or publishing tool or CMS. So at the time, it was all managed through a single mobile phone handset. And so the way we did it was just in this normal way that you set up a WhatsApp account. We created an account. We then promoted that mobile number to our audiences through online social media, through our TV and online radio presence. And invited users to send a subscribe or join message to that number to us inside WhatsApp. And then every time we got that message coming in, we would then add them manually, one by one, onto our phone's contacts. So as you can imagine, I spent many happy hours in the Delhi hotel room just going add contact, repeatedly for 6 weeks. So it's not something I would recommend to anyone to do beyond just experimentation. And I'll talk a bit later about why we're not going to replicate this sort of new service on WhatsApp in the future, but it gave us very useful sort of lessons to learn, which we're going to use in sort of different ways in terms of our editorial products.
Just reiterating what Gyanji just said right now, is that I think it's very important to have a direct relationship with the advertiser. So our ambition at Indian Express is to kick out the networks as best as we can. We want to have all our inventory sold directly. And I think slight difference maybe also with the fact that we think of ourselves as a slightly higher profile, intelligent reading sort of audience. So for us, the focus always comes to increasing rates. And the only way to increase rates, I think Krishna rightly said, is to have a direct relationship with the advertiser. So far we've not been very happy with the ad exchanges, but I mean, I think combination, like Gyan was saying right now, is probably the right thing to do. Maybe as we get more involved, we'll be able to do that. So far, the Indian ad exchanges that we have worked with, they don't pay on time, they don't pay at all very often. The arbitrage is huge. It's so huge, you can see it right in front of you, and so far I think we have been pretty happy talking to advertisers directly. enormous growth has come because of that. And 70% is the fill-through rate that we have been witnessing the last 8 months. More than 70% at least in the last 8 months. Which is a good place to be, but also means that our page views haven't, we should be growing even faster. That means that we're only 70% of our traffic. So yeah, overall I think we're competing with ad networks because the largest ad network is Google, and Google is going to give you the lowest sort of yield on your page views. So direct relationships I think is a way forward.
Excellent, thank you. I guess to you two that are using them, are you using ad exchanges for anything more than display advertising, or are you looking at them for other different advertising formats as well?
Yeah. So I think, like I said, we at least my philosophy is that the way I run it is everything else competes. So for example, if there's a bulk buy that's happening on network, it wants to do bulk buy. The only discussion I have is on rates. A person can get a better rate. We completely run on a price priority. A very simple organization, everything is for sale, but it goes to the higher bidder. So that way, the teams are competing, and that will happen also in the direct sales team. So if you got a deal, but someone will get you a better rate, so that rate will precede what you have. So we run it like that. Inventories are open, though there's certain things that we have kept exclusively, for large advertiser that we don't release to networks. But other than that, I think, and plus we also have a different strategy for the international traffic that we have, because we get a significant traffic from outside India, and none of the Indian advertisers are actually, really interested in buying that kind of a traffic. So for that, we open that inventory to the international advertiser or network side.
I think that's a great area where you could effectively use network is international. Because it's very difficult to have a salesperson sitting in America or Britain trying to monetize that content. Where we're using networks now effectively is in our entertainment section, for instance. The Indian Express as a brand doesn't sort of easily lend itself to entertainment content. I mean, it's more serious, political, that kind of stuff. So the advertisers who we talk to and who like us and who have long-term, deep, repeat relationships with us are people looking for our open pages, or people looking for our political pages. So on the entertainment section, we'd love to talk to somebody who has got all the sort of FMCGs and all the sort of young targeted advertisers. We can deal with them because we don't immediately plan on talking to those guys directly. So I think that is the two areas we could sort of talk to networks.
I suppose the other question that I would have would be, what are some of the key factors that you all would look at in a partner for an ad exchange? I heard you mention granular controls. I heard you mention creditworthiness. I think earlier when we were talking, the price and all that. What are some of those key factors that our audience should be looking for as they analyze whether to work with ad exchange partners or not?
See, I think for us it's always the what kind of a brand that he's representing, what is the creditworthiness. That's a very important factor for us, because one of the reasons also we work with networks is that we don't have bad debts with them. There are no payment issues with them. It's more of a proprietary cycle that runs out across. So creditworthiness is a big thing. Second thing we obviously look for is a scale. So we don't want to run a network, giving us like a few $1,000s a month, and not really able to scale up. So if the advertiser is not really able to scale up and cater to take up a larger volume, and then we really discontinue that network. And then third for us is the rate, which we like to control. So whenever we get a network on board, we clearly define what's the base rate that we need. And on that base rate, if they can commit a volume, that's only when we open up a network. Otherwise, we don't.
And are you enforcing that through your ad server or as just a
Both.
policy?
So both. So we are enforcing that to the ad server, and plus also, we see the dashboard every day. Rather we are, and if a day the dashboard doesn't really live up to the ECPM, we discontinue that. We don't. That's something rates we are very, very clear about. We don't want to go beyond a certain point.
No, I agree on the scale thing. If you've got a network and suddenly, for whatever reason, you had a bad month, your direct sales was a bad month, you expect the network to fill up what you're not going to be able to sell. And if you're not talking to a person who's big enough, that becomes the point because you're expecting that. So I think scale is pretty good.
I think for other topics, web still dominates. Yes. Because they don't have a very good app. But for us, after we roll out our app, it's like taking 80% of the traffic. So mobile side is flat because most of the mobile side traffic comes from Facebook. And website
I mean the rate. The rate.
Mobile would be more expensive.
Double?
I'm not sure. But for display ads, website still dominant because the display ads there are more rich format display ads.
So at this point, I guess I'd like to turn it over to the audience. What are some questions, thoughts, or comments that you have on working with ad exchanges?
It's just, I mean, I think the sales process across mediums still remains the same. They don't change with the medium. They would definitely look for you, look for your reach, right? And the more dominant player you are, you can really command a more premium rate in the market. So of course, that's one of the key factors that always remains. What kind of audience connect do they have? Do they really fit that the audience fitment is there? Like I was talking about, will they look for more serious political advertisers? They would look for a specific brand. Are they looking for a more youthful audience? They would go for a specific section or a separate segment of website that they would go. So TG fitment, I think, is very, very key. How do you pitch your TG fitment, and how does your advertiser perceive your TG fitment? Sometimes they can be two different things. And then obviously what kind of solutions are you probably, you give to the advertiser. So I guess largely these are probably three parameters at least that we've seen in the market on which to do large part of the selling. But I guess this remains across the medium, I guess. It's not really for the digital, it's the same guy who's buying at the end of the table.
Which variety of analytics do you rely for the
None.
Which variety of
analytics? We said this is a number.
So number, is there any single established currency which holds good for all the networks?
See, I think that's a challenge in digital right now. There's a single currency. The few guys will believe ComScore, which is probably more widely used than a Google Analytics. But the discrepancy between a ComScore and a GA. ComScore will report a number, and you go find that number, and what's not my number, and stuff like that. So actually, we stay clear of that. We said this is a number. And we stick at that. I mean, we don't fight the battle of ComScore versus GA or Web Trends or anything else in the market.
Do you rely on ComScore?
I don't know. That's the number we pitch in the market. I can't really rely. I mean, he can look at the number that he wants, but we'll go with this is the number that we have. Rest is for him to decide, and we tell him the differences. It's not that they are not aware of the discrepancies between a ComScore and a GA. They are clearly aware. Even ComScore states that they don't take public sources. I mean, there's a sampling technique they use. So they probably understand that.
We have a question in the back.
Cyber cafes must be a large chunk of your traffic also, right?
Cyber cafes, I think, of late they're declining now. I think with large part of our traffic moving to mobile now, so that
this ComScore doesn't look at cyber cafes or mobile.
Mobile, so they would be starting mobile in about 2 months now.
You will say that with us.
But they have not yet. So I think that's another thing that's happening. They're not in app, they're not in mobile, and India will largely be a mobile-driven economy. So.
Yeah, I wanted to know. Stina did talk about it a bit. The pressure from the editorial on the kind of product that you want to put out.
I believe she was asking a question, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but she wanted you to elaborate a little bit on the different pressures on editorial that come from the advertising side and the marketing side.
They always want us to write in a very commercial way. They want their brand very obvious. But for editorial, we don't want to compromise because that would look really like an ad. And the traffic will be very bad. And because we have comments, Facebook comments at the end of the articles, if you do stuff like that, it's really bad marketing because people will write really bad reviews beneath. So we have to convince, with our experience, to convince those advertisers. If you do that, actually you are doing harm to your brand. And we have examples. We post, sometimes we post on Facebook too. And when people discover it's a scam, you trick me to look at your ad, they will point that out in the comments. So with all these examples, we succeed to convince our clients not to do so. And if they believe in our editorial decision, we can guarantee they can have very good traffic. And also we'll build in our apps, the top sections is the top stories, the ranking. So if they pay us good money enough, we can actually guarantee the placement within that top stories. So it's 4, 8, or 11. If you pay most money, you can have number 4.
Interesting.
Aren't you competing with like a buzz? I don't know if Hong Kong is a BuzzFeed or not, but on those, I mean, for them, the story is essentially a very interesting ad. It's a well-written ad. So the kind of
have some small startup like BuzzFeed, but they are not as viral as us because we start like 6 years ago, and we are just like, actually we are just like BuzzFeed. Our videos are just like BuzzFeed videos. Our style are just BuzzFeed videos.
Great, thank you. I think there was a question in the back of the room.
We talked about serving ads using network for overseas, but some of the challenges we face, I mean, my company faced. I'm not a marketing guy, but I'm a little confused about that. But some of the challenges we faced was like the network acts got hacked and ads were served in our site which are not supposed to be present there. I mean, which are not suitable for our content. We only noticed when it was reported by users. So, do you guys have any experience on that?
So, which company is this?
Sorry?
Which company is this? Which company are you working for?
Manorama Online.
I think like I always said, you got to monitor the networks very carefully, and sometimes it's a network, right? So they do have their dangerous side of it, and you got to keep flagging that out, in terms of a certain ad that you think should not be on the site, because a lot of the guys are using a lot of different, especially a lot of the CPD downloads for app. They use very different graphic, which is nothing to do with the ad to do that. But it's the kind of filter that you set for yourself. A lot of the networks gives you a lot of control.
Firefox plugin that you could see an ad if it was from their network, and if you didn't like it, you could report it immediately just as you were browsing. So we would have our digital ad ops team always looking at, we want people reading the site anyway, and if there's something that is either offensive or we were concerned had malware or something like that, you could automatically flag it. So it is that selective processes and vetting is very important.
Few monitoring companies as well, and few times, if you have a massive site, your users will report it. So now you can't ensure that everything you would catch, but probably if you catch it early, also I think that's there. But there are few monitoring softwares as well that helps you kind of filter out the content and look at the malicious links or something like a malware.
it's a fact of life that I think we all know, that technology makes bad people worse and good people better. And there's good and bad people on earth, so they're always going to be trying to exploit things. We'll always be trying to serve good, credible advertising. Other questions? Yes, we have a comment up front.
I was just thinking about the question about the currency. We have quite a good experience in Sweden that the Advertisers Association and the publishers.
But our audience is very different. So how do you package your content for a completely different audience from your print? So this is where the data comes in. So on Facebook, we have 2.5 million followers. And Facebook is amazing with data. Like I have 5-6 pages of data purely on our website. I'll just distill what is interesting for you is that, okay, you have fans and non-fans. So don't think that all your likes are fans. Fans are people who keep coming back to your site. And you have non-fans who are being hit by your content here and there on their TL, maybe some friend has shared it. So basically, out of the fans, only a fifth are non-fans. But these non-fans end up being 60% of your engagement. People don't really look at non-fans. You're looking to cater to your followers. But what if you start looking at your non-fans, people who haven't liked your page? There's a huge opportunity there. And that is what we try to sort of cash in on with content that's packaged for social. So these are all very serious Indian Express kind of stories, but they have been packaged. On your TL, you don't really get the time to read a 1,000-word copy. You actually want to catch the attention of the reader at the very point. It's like your headline, and maybe your headline on Facebook is a great picture, or a screaming headline which you cannot do on Facebook because of the content or the font size. Maybe you play on that with an image, which we have been trying actually very successfully over the past year or so. Here also, the question arises, why are we doing this? 83% of our Facebook users are under the age of 34.